Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Contingency Plan Podcast. My name is Jedi Master David. With me, as always, is Darth Austin.
Hello, everyone.
Well. Look at us. Maybe skipping weeks, depending on my posting schedule, which sometimes is reliable and sometimes isn't.
I mean, I don't see how we couldn't have skipped weeks, seeing as how we had a week without content.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, we do have a couple of things we want to chat about today. And, I like to keep as mysterious as possible. We got to stretch this out, for the lulls, man. We've got, like all those YouTube folks who, say, listen to the end for everything or whatever. You got to listen to the end.
There's never anything.
Yeah, there's never anything going on in those.
You skip to the end, it's like, did I actually skip? It looks like you're doing the exact same thing.
Yeah. There's no contest here. There's no free thing at the end, unfortunately. Yeah. So let's just break into how's your week?
Hot, very hot.
Yeah,
extremely hot.
Yeah, it's been a
terrible week for that. I think it's gonna be like 97 Friday. So not looking forward to that. Luckily, leaving a little early to finalize some paperwork on the house, and last week sold the other house, so making some progress there. One less headache to deal with. Got a little money stashed up to go shopping. Excited about that.
To go shopping.
Yeah, car shopping specifically.
Yeah,
Definitely buddy. Car shopping.
Ooh, good times. Car shopping.
Yes, it's my least favorite hobby.
It sucks.
It does. And I still I can't decide if I want to go marketplace, go deal with a local person and hope they don't murder me, or just go to a dealership and hope they don't screw me. So
yeah,
either way.
The private sale has changed a lot. It really has, because pretty much most of my cars have been private sale or very small lots. Mm-hmm. That you go in there with cash and you just walk out a minute later type of deal.
Yeah, with a really bad Civic that you're gonna convince your brother to buy.
Well, that was a different story. I've had better cars than that one. That one just, man, that's been a lemon.
That was a lemon.
That was definitely a lemon. It looked good, like it seemed fine, but that one just didn't work out. I'm pretty sure we've memed on that car for at least a year.
And I'm sure everyone thinks, well, probably no one actually cares enough to think, but I'm sure you guys think, why don't you just get rid of it? It's like, because I still can't. I know I should, but it's like, it's like a $500 or $1,000 here. It's still cheaper than selling it for nothing, because I know that's what it's worth. And then going out and spending $8,000.
Yep.
Because I'm not buying a cheap car again. I'm going to spend like $8,000 to $10,000 and never any less than that.
Well, that's what happens in the car world, though, because sometimes you find that $5,000, well, not anymore really, but which is probably more like a $10,000 car nowadays, and it's fine. And it's fine for a good long while, and everything's good on it. It doesn't have much in the way of issues, but I'll tell you that isn't the norm. It just isn't the norm anymore. It's crazy.
It's becoming less. To me, I'm seeing less and less value in buying a car in that range, because I'm spending a substantial amount of money, not an amazing amount of money, but a decent amount of money on a car that will still probably have the same issues as the $5,000 car.
Yeah.
I get into the debate of, do I get full coverage insurance because I hit a deer with a $10,000 car? That kind of screws up my week compared to a $5,000 car. It's like, well, I'll just drive it all dented up. It's like, I don't want to do that with a $10,000 car.
Right.
So you spend more on insurance. And at that point, with repairs and everything else, where does it blur the line where it's like, maybe I should just finance the new car for a cheap rate? Which I don't want to do either, but I've had more luck with that.
Well, you've had some bad luck with vehicles, though, in general, though.
Yeah, the Camry has been like the best vehicle I've had since, God, I was a teenager, probably.
It says a lot about Toyota, though. Toyota's always been pretty solid. But But yeah, no, car shopping's not fun. We actually just bought a vehicle last week. We got a Jeep, a Wrangler. You
Was
know
that
what?
private or lot?
No, it was a lot.
Okay.
It was a lot. And I mean, when I say Jeep, I always mean Wrangler.
Yeah.
That's
Because that
always
is
what
the
I
only Jeep that
mean.
exists.
I mean, I had a Cherokee and a Liberty,
Mm-hmm.
back in the day, but no. When I say Jeep, I always mean a Wrangler, and it's nice. We've really enjoyed it so far. We actually took a day trip and drove, down to Cincinnati, and
Nice.
did some
Jungle gyms.
We did go to Jungle Gyms. We went to the sign museum that they have down there, which is cool, and had dinner and all that good sort of stuff. So yeah, but no, it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice.
Cool. Did you get it from a dealership so you have warranty, or it's a smaller lot like you were talking
No,
about?
I mean it's a larger dealership. I didn't opt in for the warranty because, like, honestly, because it was used, it's not new, so
Right.
it doesn't have factory warranties. And honestly, those used warranties, they aren't cheap.
Yeah.
They really aren't.
Yeah,
So,
and half the time they weasel out of actually taking care of anything that goes wrong. So
yeah, this thing was in really, really good condition as well. So I just didn't feel the need. You could go up to 5 years, but the thing is that the mileage on those isn't as good as they used to be. And in all honesty, like, they try and scare you into saying, well, oh, you're going to pay thousands. You're going to pay thousands either way.
Yeah.
The fact is that within 3-5 years, if it comes off the lot and you're having catastrophic problems within 5 years, depending on the age of the car. So this car that we bought is less than 5 years old. So at that point, if you're having catastrophic problems, it wasn't good to begin with. And you know what? It's
Right.
all luck. It's all luck
Right.
at that point because you never know. And then at that point, you've paid a ton
yeah.
in that warranty just to hold it over for maybe. And I mean, when you make relationships with shops, like garages that you trust, generally speaking, your out of pocket cost on even major stuff is not going to be that bad. But you have to make those relationships you got to find that local garage with the guy who does good work and who isn't going to charge you an arm and a leg. Now you go to the dealership's mechanic, or you go to big corporate mechanics, they're going to rake you because that's what they do. I mean, they're not there to help
Sure.
you. But if you go to the local stuff, you got to find those people, and they're in every town. They really are. But it's intimidating sometimes to find that.
Yeah. Luckily, I have one. He is extremely busy all the time, so it's usually like 2-3 weeks out actually working on it. So that's the only problem there. But it's tough. The big thing for me, I think, is psychologically, getting to a place where you realize, okay, you are not getting absolutely screwed having to spend a decent chunk of money on something. A perfect example of that. It's easy to talk about when you're not in the situation, but like one of my coworkers just has transmission go out. He's like, I'm gonna get rid of the car, man. I've already put so much money into it, and I don't want to put more into it. It's like, well, okay, but you spent $7,000 on the car.
Yeah.
You're gonna sell it for like $2,000 with a blown or a bad transmission. You're gonna spend $2,500 to rebuild it. So how are you gonna spend more doing that than just, or I should say, how are you gonna spend less buying a new car versus just fixing that car?
Yeah.
I think whenever someone has a big breakdown, all of us have that little moment of like, ooh, it's time to go shopping, get something newer and nicer.
Yeah.
So it's easy to rationalize that.
Well, it's also really hard for people to keep an emergency fund for that kind of stuff.
It is.
So that when the big problem happens, you have a chunk of cash that will take care of that. And that's hard. That's hard for people to keep nowadays, with the way things are economically and so forth. So,
and I was at a point in my life where we had made some bad decisions with cars, and that kind of put us in a hole. So I went with a lease, and that was our only car for a while. And The only reason I did is because I needed to know exactly what I was going to spend month to month, and I couldn't have surprises.
Yeah.
But it's not always the best route.
Nope. No doubt. So that was about 10 minutes of car talk.
Yeah.
I think
segueing into our new podcast. This isn't Star Wars. We're talking shop.
Yeah, God, talking shop. Yeah, not enough knowledge for that.
No.
So we want to reminisce a little bit because it is actually this month, beginning of the month, that we first started this podcast. It's been like 5 years of doing this podcast. And
insane how quickly time has flown.
It is, you know, I mean, I remember, well, you know, but before I get on to member berries, because I do want to talk about that stuff a little bit, because I don't like to bury the lead. Here's kind of where it all sits, right? So me and you had a conversation, and the fact of the matter is that the enjoyment level for this podcast has been somewhat diminished for a little while. Now, if you track the timeline, at the end of last year, you were doing your school. We were trucking along pretty consistently for a long time, making sure it was basically every week upload, very little in the way of stoppages. But the fact is that, you know, the school stuff happened. You had to focus on that and get it done. Obviously the best decision. But sort of after that, you know, we got really behind on the shows. But I think that, you know, while I have always enjoyed our conversations and so forth, I don't necessarily know that I enjoy all the material that we've been covering. And that gets difficult when you're not really as hyped as you used to be about a thing. It's not like we don't love Star Wars, we do. And even some of the stuff we're not so hyped at, it's like, it's not that I don't like it, it's just that I'm not hyped anymore. And then you couple on the fact that, you know, we're just busy. You know, we're busy. We're just busy. We're both hitting, you know, semi-transitional moments in both of our lives where, you know, you're stepping into a lot more of the adulthood of, you know, home ownership and, you know, just all the stuff that's entailed in that. You know, I'll be getting married here very soon, and there's a lot to that. And, you know, just dealing with the everyday life, you know, I have a pretty we both have pretty demanding jobs and so forth. Mm-hmm. And, you know, while it's tough sometimes when you think, well, man, you can't just scrap together an hour a week to do this. Well, you realize sometimes things just change in priorities, and then times become precious and so forth. So again, not to bury the lead too much here, but the podcast is it's not ending, but it's going to be changing. I guess would be the word. Realistically, there will probably be a sensible diminishing in the amount of podcasts that are dropped, and it'll probably more than likely drop to once a month if we're being realistic about things. Now, I know some people might say, well, then you're just not going to do it. One day it'll just be over. I don't think that that's the case. I just think that, you know, it'll just be probably back to longer episodes where we're just sitting down and talking about an entire series or getting into a book, you know, something like that, giving us more time to digest what we're watching and not being so rushed.
Yeah, and I think it'll be more refined because of that. When we look back 5 years ago, how we did our podcast, and I never thought that, you know, it was bad particularly. We had our growing pains and everything, but we've done things pretty differently the past few years. We're not doing chapter by chapter breakdowns of books anymore. We're not, you know, doing our 2 hour long videos where we just kind of pick a topic while eating Taco Bell.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Not that I don't miss that, of course. And there was something really fun about going through Vector so thoroughly. And, you know, maybe someday that'd be a cool thing to do again. But realistically, you know, we had very different lives back then. We were both single at the time.
Yep.
You know, neither of us really had a ton of responsibility outside of work. That's the only thing that really hasn't changed in our lives is how much effort we put into our careers. But I think refining that down to like, okay, stop doing the chapter by chapter. Let's focus on a book and really thoroughly go over it, do notes, everything. That worked for a long time. And I think we had a lot of higher quality reviews, in my humble opinion, because of that. But I've seen over time our reviews have gotten a little bit more negative, and I definitely can pinpoint the start of that. I'm not going to bring it up, but we all know what our least favorite book series is. And
I mean, I'll say it: The High Republic.
Oh, well, I wasn't even going to go there. I was actually thinking more Alphabet Squadron, but yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
well,
High Republic,
the second
High Republic
book, yeah.
was yeah.
Yeah, that hurt.
Yeah, both nails in the coffin there, but I think that our first big change helped us out a lot, and personally, I think lately we've been phoning in. Phoning in's a hard word to use, but we've been putting less effort into both our book reviews and more specifically our TV show reviews. Obviously, Mandalorian, we put a lot of love and time into, but some of these other TV shows just what we're starting to realize is they're not really worth 15 hours of content. And that's what we're kind of putting in. I mean, Andor was definitely worth it, but
yeah,
I don't know if Bad Batch is for us. And it's not a bad show, but it's not something I want to dedicate 15 hours of my life to talk about on top of watching it.
Right.
I don't know. That's just kind of where I'm at with how precious my time is to me. And I think we're just kind of regurgitating what we've watched, not really thinking about it at all. And I don't know, sometimes having a month to watch something and then maybe rewatch it. More importantly, books. There was a time when I would read a book 3 times before we reviewed it.
Yeah.
I barely get through it once now. And when I do, it's typically on Audible, which isn't necessarily better or worse in any way. But, I would like to start. One thing I'd always heard that really is good for retention is to listen to the audio of something whilst reading it and matching your speeds up where they sync perfectly. You just remember a lot more when you listen to something at the same time you're actually reading it. I'd like to put more effort into our book reviews. I'd like to have longer, richer conversations about it.
Yeah.
So I think that switching to once a month isn't going to make this worse. I think, if anything, it'll make it a lot better.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, the deal is that if we ever do decide to completely axe it, I mean, we'll obviously talk about that. But for me, the big reason to start the podcast is, one, I just was interested in podcasting. And 2, I think at that time, I just wanted to make sure that we were talking on a reliable schedule, like you're just conversing, going over things. We shot the shit a lot back then.
Yeah.
So, and that's where the joke from YouTube came in, where the guy had commented on like 3-4 videos, so and so minutes of talking and no Star Wars. I'm reporting you. There was some funny in that. But it was funny because, that is actually true. We did spend a lot of time talking about other stuff because it was more of a personal conversation with Star Wars intertwined in it. So there's a little bit of a difference there for me. And, I think that the books were a really, really fun thing to get into, but yeah, I mean, it takes time to get through those and as you said, digest them and really come up with informed, conversation. And while shows, television, movies are easily digestible, I don't really think that either of us are doing the research as much as we kind of used to, because the topics have started to get less interesting. And this isn't an indictment on anything. It's just a fact for me, and I would assume for you too, that the scale of interest in the new mass market content just isn't as enthusiastic anymore.
Yeah, often, more times than not, I've found myself trying to stop from being negative more than being excited about talking about what's positive about it.
Yeah.
And that's just not a mind space I want to get into anymore. And no podcast or show or book is really worth that to me, to just be kind of every week have this moment where it's like, I get to do another thing that I don't necessarily want to do. And that's kind of where we were at with some of the shows and the books. And, no job is super fun, but this isn't a job yet for us. We're not really making anything off of this. So I don't see, and I don't necessarily see that changing, and I'm fine with that. But if that's not going to change, I think we need to, make it more fun, and this will do that. I'm sure of it.
And this was always just a passion project. It really wasn't, the goal to make lots of money and so forth. But just more from an angle of how things were to where they are. We had a time frame there pre-COVID where we were doing a lot of growth. We were, being promoted on Podbean. I think personally, and this is just my opinion, it's maybe true, maybe not. I think podcasting has taken a huge hit post-COVID because people, I think they overexhausted just listening to podcasts, through COVID. I know I did. I barely listen to any podcasts anymore because it was like almost I overdid it.
Yeah, burn out.
Yeah. But I do think there's a downturn, but we had a tremendous amount of growth there for quite some time. We're almost at like 30,000 downloads, but I feel like that all happened within a shorter span. So average listenership is down. And I think that's the type of, I don't really think it's us necessarily. I think it's the content. I just think it's, people aren't necessarily as interested in newer Star Wars. I mean, my God, how many hate channels are there out there about Kathleen Kennedy and Disney and all this stuff? And it doesn't necessarily feel like the fan base is always being listened to either. And that doesn't help anything. And then when you follow it up with, this tremendous build up to certain book series, and then what you get is kind of like not really what you expected to get. It kind of like it hurts a little bit because you pour a lot of time and effort into it and you really want to do it justice, but it's not necessarily doing you justice.
I mean, my God, how long did it take for things to start kicking off with High Republic? No one was talking about it. It seemed like we were the only ones really interacting with this content.
The funny thing is, you remember the piece of High Republic content that we seemed to like the best was the comics. Of all the things, of all these grandiose books, the comics wound up being one of our favorite pieces of media from the High Republic. The books just got so convoluted that it didn't feel like anything anymore. I mean, you're talking about the Great Disaster, and it's just a ship that got bumped out of hyperspace. It's just,
woo.
Woo. And then you have these cool characters, but you build them up so flawed that they never really feel heroic. And again,
and they never overcome their flaws.
No, they never overcame their flaws, unfortunately. So, I don't want to draw too much flack on the current content and everything, because I know that there are people that really like it. I understand that. But along with time constraints and life constraints, the content constraints are out there as well. It's not quite hitting the mark as much for us, and maybe it gets to the point like, with the older folks who grew up with the original series and then ragged on the prequels that we watched and so forth. And maybe it's just our time to just kind of be like, well, maybe it's just not our thing anymore. Yeah. Which I don't really believe personally, because I still think in like the new movies, there was some still good like in
Mandalorian
there.
And,
Andor, Mando. Yeah. The Clone Wars in general, Rebels.
A lot of the Disney books have been awesome.
No, we've read a lot of great books over the years. And I even think like, Ahsoka probably will be interesting to us,
Yeah, the Queen series was great.
The Queen series was pretty good. Yeah, the first one,
Master and Apprentice.
Yeah, the Dooku Jedi Lost or whatever that was fantastic.
Rail Avros.
Yeah, Rail. I haven't thought about that in a while, but yeah, I mean there was a lot of great stuff. It's just I think it's more time. It's more a time thing. So, but that's kind of the lead there. I mean, there will be a diminished amount of episodes that are gonna be, put out. I don't like to string it along and act like there's going to be some glut of content coming up where we get back to normal and so forth. Because I see too many channels do that, where it's like, taking a break, we'll get back to regularly scheduled programming, and then they never do. They never do.
Well,
it's never quite the same.
There's nothing more sad scrolling through YouTube to like some of your old favorites where they still have on their banner when you go to the videos page, post weekly. But then you look at the posts like this month, 3 months ago, 7 months ago, a year ago. And that's not what I want to get to. I want to avoid burnout. That's why I want to do this.
Well, I mean, think about some of the podcasts that, like, we've interacted with and or have listened to. So like some of the, and I don't want to like diss it, but like the smaller voices out there, just because they're not the majors, like, what are some of the majors? Like
Star Wars Theory.
Yeah, Star Wars Theory and
Stupendous Wave and stuff like that.
Yeah. So there are a few, but like think about like Sith Talkers. I met them in Chicago. I'm trying to think of the other guys from Texas. They're not around anymore. I cannot remember. Was it Rule of Two or something like that? Might have been what it was called originally. Even some of like my friends, aren't really doing it anymore, or at least not regularly or as much. Like, Mike with Flying Casual, that they upload not much, but I know he's always loved Star Wars. Even, Hyperspace Hangout isn't, I don't even know if that's quite a thing anymore. Cause I know that, like Ez his life has, taken on a lot more. So there's a lot that he's not doing, and he's walked away from some of his podcasts and so forth and started some other projects and whatever. And even like Clashing Sabers, with because they were running like several and Sith Talkers actually is on the Clashing Sabers network. It's one of their shows now, but the amount of uploads is not like a ton. They do it when they can. They have shows when they can, and there was like 4 or 5 different shows on there, separate shows. So the fact is that a lot of these people are not uploading as regularly either, or aren't even around anymore, or are basically aren't around anymore, are very irregular. So, it just is what it is. I mean, I think a 5-year commitment to anything is pretty substantial. And I've enjoyed a lot of it. I mean, obviously the biggest thing is just hanging out with you on a weekly or whatever basis and just, talking for a while. That's probably the best part for me.
Well, I think that was always the goal. But I mean, we've been doing a lot more outside of the podcast here lately, the 4 of us, and that's not about to stop. So it's not like, we're doing the podcast less because we don't get along with each other anymore. Any of that bullshit. It's just things are different.
Well, I mean, we are, doing something every couple of weeks,
Yeah.
And we will have another project, unrelated project.
And it'll be in the same vein of, specifically a reason for us to get together and talk about different topics.
Yeah. And I mean, we've talked about it. We've talked a little bit about the bourbon stuff lately because we've kind of ventured down some of those roads, and eventually there will be probably a YouTube for that. And we have some other plans for that. But yeah, I mean, life goes in phases. You have different interests, things get set aside. Maybe you come back to them. Maybe something new crops up and it's just a bigger thing. You think about the constants in your life. Like for me, I still play guitar a lot. You know what I mean? I still do that when I can. But you don't really much get around that much anymore, right? I mean, to be realistic, right?
Yeah.
You still have the equipment, but it's just, life sometimes it takes things and then you maybe get back into them, you start other things, and then, it's just how life runs.
Yeah. There's a lot of cycles. And you know what? When life slows down for us and we're in our 40s or whatnot, we might ramp this back up and do it 2 episodes a week. Who knows? Maybe we'll just be those people, the new boomer generation, essentially. Just talking about Star Wars in the good old days. But it's not, I don't look at this as a sad thing. And I hope you guys, don't hate this either. I hope you're excited about the quality going up. And we're not going anywhere. You're stuck with us. I mean, that's not happening.
Yeah. But, like we said, it's more what will come out is going to be probably longer format and a bit more focused on one thing. It was funny. I was actually looking back through, the list of episodes, because let me actually check this real quick. How many episodes have we put out? And granted, there's a little bit of I wonder if this actually calculates. Let's see
well
here.
Above 200 at this point.
Well, there's a semi bit of an issue with count, because when I was doing the power half hours for comics, I counted those as separate. So we have done 222. This would be 223 main show episodes.
So we're probably talking 250 at this point if you want to
probably
count yours.
Yeah, probably 250 to 275, somewhere in that range. Of episodes that we've put out over the course of time. It's kind of funny. I'm looking just in my Podbean here, just looking at some of this stuff. Like, Flying Casual, Mike's podcast, Real Good Duty. Their last episode was back in February. But they have a lot of stuff going on. Hyperspace Hangout is still out there, but I think that's just Matt, my buddy Matt. And maybe somebody else now, but 2 months ago. So they're still doing it. Bend the Knee is still pretty big. Their Game of Thrones podcast. That was actually the one that popped off. That I did some very early episodes with them. But Balance of the Force, that's what it was called. Balance of the Force. That was David and John. They were both from Texas. I met them at Celebration. They haven't uploaded, and granted, I think that they had another episode page. I think they had another page that they must have taken down, but their old page hasn't been updated since 2019. So I think that they had another page that they must have taken down, and then but they only uploaded on that for a while. Clashing Sabers, though, they are still doing relatively. No, they they have still been very consistent. I need to revise that, because they still have. They've been very consistent. But
they were one of the bigger ones of that group as well.
Sort of, yeah.
Aren't they?
Well, we actually were in the running. Download wise, we were very close for a number of years.
Really?
And then they did have a little bit more of an upward swoop, but it was mainly because, and I don't want to take anything away from them. One, they uploaded a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
Two,
Claudia Grace books had a lot to do with that too, correct?
Well, they did a lot of interviews with a lot of people too. So they did a lot of reaching out, networking, working the Twitter a lot more and the social media. Gotcha. So yeah, they interviewed a lot of the authors and so forth. So obviously that's a big thing. But yeah, I mean, there are several in here that just, there really haven't been much in the way of uploads. But regardless of all that, there's still a lot of great Star Wars content out there. And, we're not stopping. We're just hoping that if we can get towards like building in more of a buffer between episodes, that we're actually like digesting a bit more, bringing a bit more to the table, as opposed to just trying to hack jaw weekly things that, we're constantly up against the gun and we're like, dang, man, and just, I got to do this. We got to rush through this and get it done, sort of deal.
Right.
So,
Yeah. So that being said, I hope all you guys understand that and can be excited about what we're going to be doing in the future. And we just want to thank you, honestly, for all the time you've put in to listen to us ramble about our days and our problems and our good times and bad. And we're not going anywhere. This isn't a final monologue or anything, but we really do appreciate all the support we've gotten.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, not going away, just, kind of just a bit more ramped down, focusing a little bit more on the quality of things and probably getting back a little bit more towards literature, because I think that's where we started, and I think that's where we found a lot better conversations about things at times. Like I said, TV, movies, they're a lot easier to digest. I mean, it's easy content to just talk about, bang out there, and if you're on the mark with release schedules and everything, you can really get a lot of listenership because people are looking for either validations of their opinions or counter arguments, or, just looking for analysis of potentially what they've been watching.
Yeah.
That algorithmic stuff. And, it's just, I don't know. It's fine. it's okay. Just if we're really into what we're watching.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of the plan. Obviously there's been a lot of good stuff around, along the way. If you just think about like a lot of the lead ups to the movies and the ramping of a lot of that stuff. And, we were never a breaking news kind of thing, but, we always did try and go over current events and so forth. And there was a lot going on there for a while. There was a lot going on, and there was a lot of interesting stuff, but it's trickled down a lot. It really has. It's trickled down a lot. And hell, they're even talking about really kind of like cutting a lot of Star Wars projects, even recently. They've been talking about that, because of the quote mistakes that they've made. And the issue is that Star Wars isn't Marvel. It doesn't work like that.
Right.
And even Marvel doesn't really work like that anymore.
No, it's not working as well as it used to. There's still fanboys, but there's a lot of people who don't care anymore.
It's too much. Yeah, too much, too fast. So, but anyway, yeah, that's kind of where we're at. And, yeah. Yeah, that's where we're at. But there will be more to come. And I guess at least the only other thing is that if we ever do decide to completely cut it down, you'll know, because there will be something coming out. But, but for now, that's the plan. Longer episodes, potentially, talking about full seasons of things, literature, whatever we can kind of digest in there that we haven't already. And yeah, just kind of getting back to a little bit of how we used to do it, I think.
Yeah. And back to basics.
Yeah. I think that'll probably be pretty good, but we are going to look at some other projects and so forth. And when those are sort of realized, we'll probably talk about those. And if you want to come take a ride with us on that stuff, you're more than welcome to, but obviously you don't have to, but it'll be interesting for us, I would say.
Yes, for sure. Yeah.
All right. Well, anything else we want to chat about before we sign it off?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. Well, as Darth had expressed there, we definitely appreciate all of you, sticking along with us for the ride. Does seem like just yesterday that we were, just chatting about Vector Prime and doing our old routine, and now, now there's new routines and so forth. But there will be more content coming out. Just be on a different release schedule and potentially in a different format. So that's where we sit. So hopefully you guys are all doing well out there and have a great rest of your week.
As always, may the Force be with you.